welcome back to our next element, Scandium, the one punching through ice. Now, at this point, I just want to go through the table very quickly as a whole, because if you notice, it's a bit of a weird shape. That weird shape has got everything to do with these electrons whizzing around the outside and how many of them there are. Now, also, it looks like there's only two in this group here. There's actually more. I haven't done all the elements on this particular game. I've done 73. There are more. There are 98 naturally occurring elements, and at the moment there's 118 elements altogether, and they're still trying to work on, the Russians are trying to make element 119 without much success at the moment. To make a new element, all you have to do is smash different elements together to fuse them together, but you end up with something radioactive, very heavy, quite dangerous, only lasts a fraction of a second, which is what happens at the bottom of the table. Now, here's a picture of the table, how it should look, really, a long skinny table, because in this gap here, you have 30, 2 rows of 15 other elements, which are really rare, and a lot of them are radioactive, and most of them don't have any sort of like use. So I've done the interesting ones. These are the interesting ones. And if you take into account this one, hydrogen and helium, the two of those together make up 99% of the universe, leaving just 1% for everything else. Now, Scandium is element number 21. It's high up on the table. So that means it's light, because it's only got 21 electrons, 21 protons, and being light makes it have some uses. I'll come to that in a minute. Now, first of all, who found it? Right, now, this Scandium was one of the elements that was predicted to exist by this guy, Dmitry Mendeleev, the Russian scientist who put together the table as we know it. But he had several missing gaps, and he predicted that this one would exist, and that was 150 years ago. Here is a picture of the table as it looked when Mendeleev was putting it together, and these are the missing gaps, but they've all been filled in now. And then in 1879 there was a guy called Lars Nielsen. He was a chemist, here he is, and he discovered this element in a mineral from a mine in Sweden, and that's why he named it Scandium, after Scandinavia. And it wasn't until about 50 years later that they finally produced a pure sample. Here's a picture of a pure sample. Now, Scandium is slightly yellow, and if you take shavings off it and ignite it, it will burst into flames. And it's being lightweight, it has some uses, but it's soft and flammable. So you use it to make a thing called alloys. Now, alloys are important. What are alloys? Alloys are when you start mixing different elements together. And some of the ones you will know are copper with tin. Here they are. They make bronze. We've got copper with zinc. That will make brass, things like musical instruments. We've got iron over here. Mix that with carbon, you get steel. That's for construction, heavy girders, railway lines. If you throw a little bit of chromium into that mixture and nickel, you end up with stainless steel. There's another one. This makes an alloy. If you take scandium and mix it together with aluminium over here, have you noticed they're both high up on the table, so they're both really light. You mix them together, it becomes extremely strong, very strong. And it can be used to make airplane parts, sports equipment, bicycle frames. There's a famous gun called the Smith & Wesson. Here's a picture of it, and that has scandium as an alloy in it. And the reason he's punching through ice is the Russians used this aluminium and scandium alloy to tip the nose cones of missiles, which they could then launch from submarines underneath the ice. So So scandium was one of the ones predicted by Mendeleev. Yeah, and as a side note, I know this might sound obvious, but there are no missing elements now. Every single, we've got 1 all the way up to 118. As I said, there's no missing elements at all, despite what even this guy says.
The proposed element should serve as a viable replacement for palladium.
So, of course, Iron Man recreated a new element called vibranium, which, of course, doesn't exist. That's made up. Vibranium was the element that made up Captain America's shield, and Aurora was made out of vibranium, and I think this superhero, Ultron, also made out of vibranium, and the whole city in the Black Panther was made out of vibranium, but it doesn't really exist. And Iron Man found it as well. I think it helped him with his core energy. There you go. So there's scandium. Lightweight, not rare, but difficult to get. Useful to make alloys, very strong. And the next video is all about yttrium. We're going to find out how yttrium makes high-powered lasers, really high-powered lasers. Thanks a lot. See you next time. Bye.